You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
وتكلم من هناك لشوارزنيجر
pegarle Ronaldinho Gaucho. Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! 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 ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
And good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today, Monday, August 14th. Duane, the wait is over. Premier League is back. European soccer is back. A lot of soccer on my telly this weekend.
I can barely see straight right now, Kevin. It's been a long weekend. A lot of football, soccer, whatever you want to call it. I guess it's soccer when it's MLS. It's football when it's the Premier League. Even watched a little French league there. Got a little Neymar action in. Saw a little La Liga action. Pretty much everything got going. We got a couple more leagues ready to set up too. Or La Liga wasn't, but the Real Madrid Barcelona game. But fun weekend. Started with the Arsenal-Leicester game, which was a whole lot of something. I don't know if there's much defending going on, but it was good.
I guess it was a great beginning. It took 2 minutes? A minute 45 seconds for the first goal of the season. Like I said,
it was under 2 minutes for sure. Yeah,
like I said, it took 2 minutes to score.
Yeah, I tweeted to at Opera Joe, one of the Opta ones. They never got back to me, whether it was the quickest goal ever. You imagine they got like 6,000 responses. But certainly a fun start. And the Liverpool game, so the first two games off the hop. So we go the Arsenal-Leicester, which is 4-3, and then the Liverpool-Watford, which is 3-3. So we're like, wow, we're more goals per game than the NHL right now.
Oh, it was a crazy beginning of the season. I do feel, though, that because of the champions, let's start there, Duane. Well, here today on the show, first of all, guys, we're going, guys, listeners, people. I don't know why I say guys. Like, I usually don't say that, but Duane,
guys is gender neutral thing.
Is it? Anyways, I guess it is. But it all started badly for the champions. Chelsea with a terrible showing against Burnley. So let's just skip the Chelsea talk for this week, no?
Yeah, look, I was watching, I had that one sort of on the background as my secondary game, and I was like, every time I looked up, something was going wrong for Chelsea, which was a bit strange. 2 red cards. You get this. Well, I mean, they pulled back 3-2, so I guess there might be some positive out of that. And then there's the Costa interview comes out where he says, "Oh, just a lot of stuff going on there." It was not a good weekend for the champions. Chelsea has this history of going up, down, up, down, up, down too. So you can't help but thinking that's a little ominous after that after the start yesterday or Saturday, I guess it was.
Yeah, no, Saturday, yeah.
Yeah. So, yes, a lot of ominous stuff going on there. So, look, I think they'll be fine. But nonetheless, maybe it says good things for the – I don't know. Kevin, it's what was your thought on that one?
Oh, there's that with the Costa thing mixed. I don't know. It's maybe Antonio Conte knew something we didn't when he said last week where he's expecting maybe the toughest season as a manager of his career. I mean, maybe there's something there. It's a faulted start, but every other big clubs, quote unquote, every contender that we talked about on Friday has won their games this weekend. So Chelsea starts the season 3 points down. So they're already like a gap behind. And in a season where 1 or 2 defeat could spell the end of a title run for any team in the contendership.
They went, post to post last year, right? So this is a new experience yet. It's funny you said that because I'm watching the City game, which immediately follows. There's a standalone game at 12:30, right? And I'm thinking to myself, it's important the City get this win. They can't huff and puff like they kind of did at times versus weaker opponents last year because Chelsea dropped 3 points. And it's maybe the first week of the season, but you want to take advantage of that. And And I'm sure even Liverpool, with that last second goal to drop 2 points right there, they've got to be kicking themselves, because you've said that every contender, I don't know if Liverpool's a contender or not, but certainly top 6, top 7. Do we include Everton in the top 6 conversation now? I don't know. Got a result to start, but you got to take advantage of those points when they're dropped.
So I do feel that with Chelsea's loss to begin the season, it's going to be difficult. Yeah, it can all change next week, right? If one of the contenders loses and Chelsea wins and they're back, it's different. But now, as of now, everybody looked good, right? Manchester City was able to get the victory, scored the 2 goals, and look great. I have to say that purple kit, pretty good too. Thumbs up on that purple kit.
Every year for the first week rolls around and I think I'm not going to buy the 3rd kit this year, and then I see it for the first time. I'll probably come home from the pub one night and my credit card will accidentally fall out of my wallet, and 4 days later I'll have a package show up in my house and what did yeah. So this is my thing. If anyone wants to donate that to me, that I'll take that in lieu of money. Actually, no, give me money and the shirt anyway.
It's dangerous to load up eBay or load up Adidas.com on your phone late at night. It almost cost me a few $100 last night too.
Yeah. Remember back in the day when people used to have wish lists? Do people still do that?
Amazon wish lists? I think Amazon still has those things where it used to be like fringe part of society, to not say like certain type of actor and actresses of a certain film industry would have wish lists, and people would buy them everything.
No one wants that from us. So
no, exactly.
It should be more of a football related thing, but nonetheless,
we could put a cheap or audio interface and a mic for Duane on the wish list, and somebody could help us out with that.
Yeah, we're having some audio problems, but we'll leave that alone. Look, it's just fun. It's nice to have the European season back, and I know we're primarily an MLS show. I mean, that's our bread and butter, and it always will be. And I love MLS, and I love Canadian soccer in general, and I love the national team and CONCACAF and all of its weirdness. But the Premier League is a whole lot of fun, and it's the league where I have the most partisan passion. I'm a TFC fan, but I also sometimes get detached from TFC. Because I've been doing it for so long. So with City, it's just pure, and it's fun to have that cheering interest back in that kind of way. And it's a lot of stress. It's a lot of stress for 90 minutes. I remember tweeting out in the middle of the game. Why did I miss this again? This was about 60 minutes in, and they hadn't scored yet. But nonetheless, they got it done. So.
No, exactly. You mentioned City got it done, and United got it done yesterday. Quite impressive victory for United. And Lukaku on his debut. 2 goals, great goal by Pogba as well. Matic played amazingly. And one comment from Jose Mourinho yesterday, it made a lot of sense. He's like, I still can't believe Chelsea sold me Matic. I got one over them. I can't believe they did it. And, looking at the game yesterday, I couldn't either.
That is a strange one. And you mentioned Conte saying that he might have a strange season. That was the one that really jumped out at me. Why are you letting him go to a rival? Say what you want about Wenger and the whole Sanchez mess. They are doing everything in their power to not let him walk to City, which is where he prefers to go at this particular time. And I think they're going to win that battle. And I think that they're going to keep him. And I even think that if they can, things can change fast in this world too. So right now he wants out, but Arsenal gets off to a good start. They'll mend fences quick enough. So that's something that might happen down the line. Still a lot of I hate the fact that the transfer window doesn't close before the season starts. I always think that's a bit of a distraction in August, and I wish that they would have the window close when the season kicks off, like the Coutinho stuff out there. Like, how can you really get excited if you're a Liverpool fan and you have that hanging over your head? And, there's just a lot of questions there. I mean, it's not a great weekend for Liverpool, I'd have to say, but they dropped the late goal, and you've got the transfer. He puts the transfer request in, and he's not going to play in the Champions League playoff this week. And that's not an easy draw they have in the Champions League playoff this week either. So the season, when it starts in Europe, it starts. There's no time for resting.
Yeah, no, it's not like, okay, you start, you have a few weeks to get into gear. No, it starts, and it's now or never, basically, for Liverpool this week. And brings me to the Coutinho aspect. And Jurgen Klopp mentioned just a few days ago, saying, look, the Philippe Coutinho situation, it's way above my pay grade. There's nothing I can do to fix this. It's lawyers, it's money triggering a release clause, and it's nothing your club can do or say about it. So he's trying to do what he can, which is put a starting 11 and an 18-player roster day in, day out for games. And the club will continue to do so. But do you think, we know how Coutinho is important for Liverpool right now. Barca kind of needs him too, especially with the loss in the weekend yesterday in the Clásico. Yes, it's a Gala Clásico, but it's still, well, just look at Ronaldo's performance. Yeah, it was, we'll talk about it in a few minutes, but it seemed important. So Barca won't go down without the fight. They need players to replace Neymar, and Coutinho isn't their target.
Yeah, and well, they have the money too. That's the thing about those,
especially now. Like they especially got the money now.
Yeah, they got money. Here's some money, and here's some money. Have money for everyone. They can give us some money. Maybe we should ask Barca if they want to sponsor the podcast. Look, I'll be happy to flog for them. Go Barca. Screw Real. Yay. Oh, anyway,
give me money.
Yeah, look, I think it's pretty much a done deal in this particular case. Whenever Barca, the thing about Barca and Real Madrid is when they got their target on someone, it's very hard for those players to resist for long term because they know they can make more money there, both in terms of contract usually. I mean, outside of PSG and City, maybe you're going to look at probably more money per week at those two clubs than anywhere else. But they're also going to be Real Madrid or Barcelona players for the rest of their life. They're going to be associated with that. And I don't just suspect. I know that there's financial gain to that. And I don't want to be so cynical, this financial. There's also obviously the history behind those two clubs and the glory therein. But it's hard to fight off that siren, right? Like that's a difficult thing to overcome. And Coutinho, especially for a player of Latin heritage, those are the clubs. Those are the two big ones that every kid probably dreams of at one point. And Liverpool has a great history. I don't want to dismiss that, but I know it's a different level. It's there's the world-class clubs, and then there's those two, right? And when somebody gets your hooks under them, well, that's why there was so much pushback on Neymar. I think it's like PSG is obviously a rich club, and obviously is going to have the opportunity to have a lot of success. But in people's minds, it's still, wait, you're going to leave Barcelona? No one does that.
No, and speaking of Neymar, he left Barcelona and started against Guingamp. Guingamp. Well, they didn't really go anywhere close to the front line. And PSG, easy win. Neymar, a goal, an assist, and kind of looked very good against French opposition.
Yeah, well, look, and I also watched the Nice game a little bit. They ended up losing to, and I don't even remember the name of the team right now, some recently promoted team. So when they're considered one of the top contenders below PSG, and when they're dropping points already, you've got to think that this might be one of those 30-point runaways, right? Really, it's not really Ligue 1, it's the PSG league, and everyone's just that's the only thing you tune in for. And a lot of people were watching that game to see the curiosity of how that would play out. PSG is going to be fascinating to watch this year. Not so much in Ligue 1, as I said, but I think in the Champions League when that gets rolling in a month or so, in a month, that they're going to be must-watch TV for sure. And it was a great start for Neymar. For that club, he said that he felt like he was reborn, that it was like death at Barcelona. Like there's a bit of weird comments, and who knows what's going on with that. And maybe this is equivalent to what we're seeing here with the Cleveland Cavaliers and Kylie Irving. Sorry, getting his head wrong with it, but anyway, similar sort of situation where you don't want to be in the shadow. Maybe it's good stuff. A lot of stuff in my head right now, Kevin. Everything's back and everything's happening at once.
Everything is happening at once. And we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll touch on the Ronaldo situation yesterday and how impressive it was. Yes.
To a point.
To a point. Well, have you seen his abs? Have you seen his back? If I look like him, I would not be wearing your shirt as well.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
And we're back on Soccer Today. Duane Rollins with myself, Kevin Laramee. Duane, Ronaldo made a big impact on the game in just a few minutes yesterday. We talked about that Barca and Real Madrid home and away gala series, kind of. And comes into the pitch, scores a stunner, gets booked for celebration. Well, because he took his shirt off and pulled a Messi, which means showing your shirt that says Ronaldo in the back to the Barcelona fans. Then dives, gets booked for diving, 2 yellow in 3 minutes. Dude, you're gone.
And then he sort of allegedly shoves the referee to make a decision there.
I would call it a hard pat on the back more than a shove, but yes, you can do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about whether he'll be suspended there. I'm going to spoiler alert. He won't be.
He won't be. Like,
beyond me.
The rules of the game says 12 games for physical contact with a referee, right? The ban of 12 games. That's not going to happen to Cristiano Ronaldo.
No. He will be probably someone somewhere will probably have a little conversation with him and say, dude, please don't do that again because you're going to put us in a really awkward position. But all ahead. We're all good for now.
Make a donation here. Make a little contribution here, and we'll forget about it.
Yes, exactly. And I'm sure the referees are not particularly happy about that, but they're also live in the real world, and they probably understand what's going down here as well. So, yeah, look, the celebration, for those who don't know, was in direct reaction to something Messi did. So it continues, last year, it continues that sort of rivalry, which is real, and it adds a little spice to everything there. We mentioned before, we talked last year at the end of last season with whether Messi did the heel turn, and all of a sudden Ronaldo was the good person again. He was the baby face. Have they switched back with this now? Is like this we have like a double switch reverse?
Yeah, I don't know. It's I guess
they seem to me like, not to be a wrestling guy, but it seemed to me like they're the perfect, like the ultimate heel turn will be like in 3 years when one of them decides to like completely switch again and they team up to make like the world champion tag team. They go to
Ronaldo and Messi will never play together. Happen.
No, it really wouldn't. It would be like the world would blow up. It would be interesting to watch for sure, but they don't seem like they're necessarily going to be two that are ever going to do that for sure. No, look. Does it mean anything? The result, I think that it sort of reinforces what a lot of us were thinking, that Ronaldo has maybe got a step on Messi right now of late, and that Real Madrid probably has a step on Barca of late. So that's kind of what it reinforces to me. But that's not put too much stock in a gala, as you say. It's always intense when those two teams play. Even those that watch, I didn't watch it because I don't watch any of those international club cup things that goes around North America. Out of principle, I don't watch those games. Didn't even watch the Manchester Derby. I watched 2 seconds of it, actually. That's a lie, because someone wanted me to find them a stream, and I helped them find a stream, and I had to watch 2 seconds of it. But by and large, I don't watch them. But anyone who did watch the El Clasico, quote unquote, in Miami said that even in that game, the intensity was there because those two teams just cannot play loose against each other. They just can't.
No, they can't. And that feeling that I see now, the more and more I watch Clásicos, and let's call it what it is. Yes, two teams that are great. But those two players, Messi, Ronaldo, you know what? They hate each other. Before I wasn't thinking so, but they do. Like, don't leave them together in a room because somebody might beat up. I don't know who would beat up who, though. That's the question. Messi's a little smaller, but a little stocky, a little nervous. Ronaldo, well, don't touch his face because then you'll get the full wrath. And yeah, that could be dangerous too.
Logic says that Ronaldo would win said fight. He is the bigger man. He's a very big man, especially for a soccer player. And as you said, you see those abs. But some people always wonder, like, as much as he's like muscle on muscle, I think there are some people out there that still wonder whether they might be like soft muscle, if that makes sense. That there's not really a toughness behind it. So maybe Messi, because he grew up, a little poorer, grew up kind of having to fight for things because he's so little, and Napoleon syndrome and all that sort of stuff. some people might suggest that Messi might be, because the old saying, I don't know if it's an old saying, but I say it all the time, is that crazy beats strong every time. So Messi might be a little crazier. So yeah, I would be 50-50 on that one for sure.
Yeah, no, exactly. But enough of hypothetical fighting talk. There's enough of that going on in the world right now with the hypothetical fight that's actually going to happen in the next few weeks. Jeez, don't even get me started. Like, they're getting to me. I'm getting intrigued. Why am I doing this to myself? Anyways, I'm just going to spend
$10 at the day. I was at the bar yesterday. They were charging $10 in advance, and I came very close to buying it. But
I was like, geez, come on. I should know better. But
yeah, it's going to be 2 rounds. But anyway,
we're all falling into it. Anyways. Yeah, but Ronaldo, like, the celebration mockery, it's not coming out of nowhere. This was premeditated. Like, Ronaldo wanted the score to do that. You could tell. And is there anything to take from it? Ronaldo gets sent off, and Zidane's not happy with the call at the end of the game, of course. But like this season, I think Madrid wants to continue with this dominance over Barca. Do you call it dominance? But they want to establish themselves as the bigger of the two. And I think, like, if you look at the motivation behind Real Madrid, and I have to say, I was quite impressed to see Madrid train in Chicago last week, how intense they're actually. Like, we talked about this, how it's probably not even fun to be a Real Madrid player, because if you don't perform every single time, you might not play the next game. Literally every single practice. Doesn't matter if your name's Marcelo or Ronaldo. You need to perform all the time. And it's that type of environment that, yes, produces amazing, amazing teams, result, play. But the stress level, the stress factor, yeah, it's probably not fun to be a Real Madrid player, Duane.
I don't think it's for everyone either, right? Like, I mean, there are players that have been world-class players elsewhere that have gone to the Real Madrid and Barcelona, for that matter, that have struggled. You look at other players even that came through that system and played there for a while that had to get out and did better elsewhere. I look at Yaya Toure, for instance, who didn't really do well under Pep originally in Barcelona, which is why all the speculation happened last year that he'd be pushed out of City. He managed to find a new role there and it's done pretty well. But yeah, it's just, I think there's a character aspect to it that not everyone has, that it's a unique situation in world sport, right? Like, it's almost, to use a North American analogy, those two clubs are like all-star teams that are club teams, though, that practice every week, that you're fighting tooth and nail just to get a sniff. Like, world-class players don't get a sniff of the field. Chicharito didn't get a sniff of the field, right?
James
really.
Rodriguez. So, remember 2014 Colombia in the World Cup? How everyone was looking at Colombia and James, and James, he's amazing. Wait till he joins the big club, becomes what he barely played for 2 years. Now he's going to be a superstar in Germany, but he barely touched the field for Real Madrid.
Precisely. It's like I said, if you could imagine the NBA All-Stars as a regular team, beyond the fact that they, maybe Golden State might not beat them. Golden State pretty much is an NBA All-Star team at this particular point. But at any rate, if you actually have the NBA All-Stars on one team, so not just an East-West thing, you put them all on one team and then you fight for playing position. That's insane, right? And that's what these clubs are in a real world, which is, again, and I've said this before and I'll say it again right now, why it was such a bloody miracle that Atletico Madrid won the title 3 years ago. Like, how did they do that? That is one of the greatest upsets in modern football history, right? So at any rate, they are fascinating to watch. And even though I would be far from calling myself a Real Madrid fan or a Barcelona fan, you still want to watch them. And you still want to watch El Clásicos, and you still want to watch them perform at the highest level. And it's fun to watch excellence. And that's one thing I miss about North American sport. It's one of the reasons I've really been compelled more and more as I get older in life towards the European game. I mean, I've always been a huge soccer fan, as people know, but it's now engulfed me in a way that it hadn't before. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that North American sports have increasingly gone towards parity as their preferred mode of operation, as opposed to excellence. And I think that you see the opposite in Europe, and that really is compelling to me as a sports fan.
Well, it makes sense too, right? The way sports evolved in North America, truly, it's over the last 20 years that glass ceiling has been broken by the NFL, and then it opened everybody's eyes, and everybody's trying to become the NFL now. You do that, well, you build the league in a way that every single beginning of season, there's actually hope, or maybe a mirage of hope for every team to maybe win the league this year, maybe win and get to the playoff and win. And that false hope, that false mirage gives everybody a little bit more leeway to separate themselves from their hard-earned money. And you kind of see this happen in North American sport more than European sports.
Yeah, I mean, we could go on. That's a topic for a different show, really. But yeah, I think that, I think that's the bubble's beginning to burst on that. You're hearing more and more people suggest that maybe we need to have some kind of hybrid system that both gives a little bit of hope to teams, but also creates excellent teams a little bit more easily. And I think that's one of the reasons the NBA has been so successful of late, because they're able to do that. But we're getting off topic when it comes to that. We have it in Europe and we see it every day. And, there are North American fans that don't like the fact that Real Madrid and Barcelona are so dominant that Bayern Munich is basically penciled them in as the champion already. A lot of people don't like that, but a lot of people see it the other way too. So fun stuff. Glad to have this stuff back. Glad to have it to talk about. But I mean, maybe if we want to talk about parity, there is something we can talk about that we also follow, and that would be Major League Soccer, Kevin.
Yeah. But just before we get there, just to finish the segment
Sure.
on Barca and Madrid, can we take anything out of this game? Like, we knew that with the departure of Neymar, Barcelona was going to be a little different, a little older. Like, Iniesta's not what Iniesta used to be. Like, tactically, still smart, even maybe smarter. Technically, skills are all there. Physically, he can't get us to point A to point B as fast, and that's just physics. It's age. So is it? We mentioned it last year. No, it was Barca dead. We mentioned it last year, but what I mean is the roster management of Barcelona getting a little too stubborn and not necessarily adjusting, evolving? Yes, there's some young players joining the team and performing. We've seen them too. But look at the old legs. Is it time for an evolution of Barca?
Maybe. Look, I mean, you got to be careful with that, and it's all context, right? Like, is Barca dead? Well, no. Barca is still Barca, but are they 2009 Barca? No, clearly not. And for a club like that, that's what they aspire to. Is they aspire to be that excellent. I mean, few clubs will ever be as good as the 2009 version of Barcelona, for sure, which, I did that poll last week, and that ended up being the team that won it. It was the greatest club team of all time, which is probably a bit of recency bias, but nonetheless, it's certainly in the conversation. They're going to want to be at the very top at a level that few clubs could ever even dream of, let alone achieve. So yeah, in that particular case, they may need to look to refocus this. And even, look, there is going to come a time in the next 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 or 5 at the top end, where they're going to have to start to look to move outside the Messi era. He is Father Time always wins. And that's going to be a very unique evolution in that club's history, because Messi's greatness is, I believe, and I do, when people get into this conversation, the Barstool conversation about greatest players of all time and all that, I don't rank Messi at the same level as a Pelé and Maradona. Other players like that, which I think had more well-rounded games. But what I will say about Messi is I think he's in his prime and as best is the best finisher that the game has ever seen. He scores in a way that few ever have. And when he was doing that at just even a slightly higher level, as I believe he was about 2-3 years ago, I think he was at his absolute peak, and he's still damn good, obviously, but I don't think he's quite at his absolute peak anymore. And they're going to have to evolve past the point where they're reliant upon him to be, basically the entire driving force of their excellence. Iniesta, as you said, is a great player as well, and certainly, an underrated player, because he's been overshadowed for much of his career by other great players around him at Barcelona. But he's, really at the end for sure. And I don't know, Messi's close to the end yet, but you do have to start to think about that, and you do have to start to think about how to turn things over. And they're not quite producing at the academy level in the same way that they were before, and maybe there's a rethink that needs to happen there too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, the famous Canadian review. You're listening to Soccer Today on SPN Radio. You can find the on-demand version of this very show on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcasts under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Subscribe to our YouTube page to make sure you never miss a live show talking about soccer today, the MLS postgame show, open lines after dark, 5 rings daily during the Olympics. Make sure you subscribe and give us a follow on Twitter at SportsPodNet and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. And we're back on Soccer Today. You can follow Duane at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee, the show at Soccer Today SPN. Canadian Review, Duane. A little bit of everything this weekend. Let's start where you were at. And if you don't follow Duane on social media, you haven't seen it, but Duane tweeted a picture at during the game and saying, "When were soccer made it here?" And stands were full. Great day of soccer Saturday in Toronto. And Duane, when will soccer make it here, right?
Well, if you listen to the critics, soccer will make it when the TV numbers match the attendance. But I think that's a bit of a silly conversation that's based on old style thinking. I'm so sick of reading that. I've read about 6. That was basically the impetus to that photo and me tweeting that out was all of these articles that are happening of late. Deadspin did one. What's that new website, The Comeback or whatever? It did one. I've seen a couple others out there where it's talking about the quote unquote pyramid scheme that is Major League Soccer and soccer, it's all bigger false equivalency about their success right now, that they're not nearly have made it yet. And it's a load of crap. When you're getting 20,000 plus averaging, and I think it's 8 or 9 markets in Major League Soccer, you're getting a couple markets on top of that are really like that. Their clubs are, Portland, Seattle, Toronto, for sure. Vancouver, Montreal are both up there as well. In terms of the teams being not just recognized in their market or understood to be in their market, but major players in that. I mean, TFC is the 4th team in the city, without a doubt. And that's not an insult. This is a club that now gets talked about regularly
4th?
outside of soccer circles. And that's, to me, an illustration that the sport doesn't need to worry about whether it's going to make it, because it has.
4th? All right. True. But that's only because it's like baseball team, the Blue Jays. You got the Raptors and the Maple Leafs. They're higher than the Argonauts. And if there could be like a void, they'd be like 4th team, Toronto, then a void. Then you have the Argonauts.
Look, and there's still room for growth, obviously. And there's, I think, a ceiling on, in terms of right now and how high soccer can go in any given market. But you look at the massive crowds that the U.S. national team gets wherever it goes, and it's like there's no weird place. You hear like they're playing games in Nashville, and if you would have said they were playing a game in Nashville like 10 years ago, you would have been, oh, that's going to be a tough sell. But now you just know it's going to sell out. And, whether that's going to convert to MLS and have massive sellouts anywhere, I think where MLS struggles right now is in the old markets where the brands have suffered in the past and have a reputational issue because of the quality that existed in 1999. Like, I think that, or in some cases like New England, where they play in bad locations and bad stadiums. That's where they struggle. Yeah. Any place they go in new, it's accepted right away as a major player in the market. Immediately jump off the hop. You look at success of Atlanta. Again, there's a market that, had you told me 10 years ago even, let alone 20, that they were going to have 50,000 people watching domestic club soccer in Atlanta, Georgia, I would have thought you had lost your mind. That would not have made any sense whatsoever.
Well, just before we move to the Canadian Review, Duane, if you go back to how Arthur Blank, the owner of Atlanta United and, of course, the Atlanta Falcons in the National Football League as well, during the Super Bowl last year, he was wearing an Atlanta United pin, right? He was treating this new product of his as top of the line, blue chip investment. He was talking about it, happy about it. He was proud and made the supporters proud. And you look at other owners, Robert Kraft, when do you ever hear him talk about revolution? When do you ever see like him at games or investment in a different? Yeah, you don't. And that is reflected by the crowd response. It's reflected by the lack of identity on one side, and a fully Atlanta United, and I'll even include Minnesota to that talk, but not to a lesser extent. Those clubs don't even feel like expansions. Like Atlanta doesn't even feel like an expansion club to me. I look at them on TV, look at their full stadium, look at the amazing atmosphere, look at the players on the field, the coaching staff, how they seem organized from day one. They felt like a professional team, and it's impressive to me. I have to say, I am impressed. And Dwayne, we haven't really had a chance to talk about this. Life has been busy, right? And I was impressed by Major League Soccer at the All-Star game. The production values, and production values means a lot. You portray your players. You give a platform for your players that is top of the line. Well, eventually, the players will be.
Yeah, and look, you think about MLS and why I think so many billionaire owners are buying into the product and the model. And this is like where a lot of, not to get into pro rel as we often always do. We always coach it with that too. Not to get into pro rel, but here we go. What they always forget is that it's that model that sort of drives the investment. And that's my primary opposition to it, is that I think that if you take the model away, some of that investment goes away with it. But nonetheless, one of the great things I think that attracts these people to it is the ultimate potential. It is soccer's last great untapped market in many, many ways, even though we just said that it pretty much has made it. But to get it to the elite level, they're not quite there yet. We all understand that. We all recognize that. But I don't think there's another league in the world outside of the traditional places where it is right now that has an opportunity, a chance to eventually get in a conversation to be among the better leagues in the world. Now we're in South America. The finances just simply aren't there. The infrastructure simply isn't there. The European teams, or leagues, I should say, are already established in terms of what their pecking order is. They might shift between 1, 2, 3, 4, might move around a little bit between each other over the years as things ebb and flow, but no one's going to break into that top 5, not even the French league. The French league is going to be number 5 forever. But if you want to look at like a 30-year, 40-year projection, and I don't think I'll still be podcasting in 40 years, but if I am, who knows? You never know. Then I think that we might be talking about a situation where Major League Soccer has caught up and is producing teams and players and so forth that are at that top level, because the financial possibilities are greater here than they are in other parts. Now, this is all caveat with the fact that, if the current president of the United States doesn't kill us all, but that's for a different podcast.
Yeah. All right. Let's go back to the Canadian review, Dwayne. Toronto, Portland. What did it actually say on the pitch?
Wow. TFC didn't have a great first half, and you combine that with the struggles, the huffing and puffing from DC United, and it started to get a little bit of mumbling in that stadium as that game progressed. But then whatever adjustments they made at halftime, they came out in that second half and with it, 4 goals. And it was, in some ways, that 4-goal second half, 2 goals by Justin Morrow, Victor Vasquez with one in there as well. It was as impressive as anything I've seen TFC do this year, because, again, they weren't looking that great for a game and a half, but suddenly they figured it out real quickly. And this, in the past, there's even to this year, there are people out there that follow this team really closely that have been waiting, that have been saying it out loud, that TFC, quote unquote, always has a summer slump. There's no summer slump. This is a slump. A team that really isn't capable of a slump in many ways. And they've had adversity thrown at them in terms of injuries. I mean, Hagen went out for a long time. We see Giroud, who's a key leader in that team and a good substitution option. He's out right now. You've seen Beitashour, who's absolutely massive to everything they do, go out, and they keep clicking along. They keep finding ways to win. And that's seem slump resistant in a way that few MLS teams have in the past. That they seem, get the trope out. The depth is absolutely startling when you think about the past of TFC and even the past of MLS. And I think that game really illustrated it. And look, they got Chicago next week. If they win that game in Chicago has not won in Chicago, or has not lost, I should say, in Chicago this year. So this is not going to be an easy game for TFC, and they recognize it. But every time that they have had one of those test games, with the exception of Dallas, which Dallas did control them pretty well down there. Every time they've done that, they've managed to step up this year, with that exception. So if they can get the job done against Chicago, then really the Shield is theirs to lose at that point.
4-1, by the
4
way.
points clear on New York right now. They demonstrated how much they could handle New York in that home-to-home back last month. So here's the funny thing. I like this too. I tweeted this out last night, and this tells you how good TFC season is and how bad DC United's is. If Toronto wins next week, or DC loses, DC United's eliminated from Shield contention. So Toronto will be assured of not finishing last, which for many years of TFC's existence, that was not a sure thing up until the final weeks of the season.
DC's terrible, Dwayne. DC's terrible. Yeah. They have 19 points at this point, and it's just laughable. 4-1 Toronto against Portland, and Toronto continues to dominate the Eastern Conference, 47 points, 24 games played, first place in the Eastern Conference. Now let's talk about Montreal, Dwayne. And on Saturday, Montreal had the opportunity to pull a coup in the standings in the Eastern Conference, and they did it. Blair Zamali got up, said, I'm going to score 2 goals. Piatti with a penalty created by Zamali. And Montreal wins 3-0 on the road against Philadelphia. Yes, it took 60 minutes and a little bit more for Montreal to get the opening goal, a nice goal by Zamali created by Lovitz. Lovitz, by the way, Duane, was very motivated by this game. He grew up about 54 kilometers away from Chester, Pennsylvania, where the home of the Union is located. So he was quite motivated by his friends and family and played maybe his best game in the Impact uniform. But Montreal, Blair Zamali, not his best game overall, Duane, but I have to say, a DP can change a game in a moment and can change his match. Having a terrible match, it changes it all, creates a goal, creates a penalty, and another goal, and it's 3-0.
Yeah, look, I thought that was Montreal's most impressive, performance of the season. That's easy to say when they win 3-0, but all things combined, we were all but writing them off after the New York loss a couple weeks ago. Said that they had must wins coming up, and so far so good in that. A lot of people talking about Piat's performance as well, playing a very tidy little role, that maybe he can add that piece that was missing. There was even an article written on MLSsoccer.com which suggested that very thing, that Piat coming in was the player that Montreal had needed all year. And if he continues to play the way he did, a very tidy performance in that 6th role, then hey, maybe Montreal can catch those 5 points up on Atlanta, and you can start to do the expansion out from there. If Montreal captures that 6th spot in the playoffs, and then were to win that playoff game, we know they're likely going to play in the next round.
Yep, but Montreal's got a chance as well this week. Atlanta doesn't play until the 23rd, so Montreal can get results tomorrow against Chicago or Saturday against RSL, both at home. If they do so, that gap is no more. Montreal still has games in hand, and Montreal would, Atlanta would have games in hand, but Montreal would have won those points at least. So you have a chance to at least to bridge that gap if you get 2 wins and if you make it 4 in a row. But for Montreal, Duane, you mentioned they had must wins. They did, and they won the last 2. And they were a must-win. That's what Montreal needed to do. And again, it's the veterans stepping up for Montreal. It's not necessarily the return of the tactic of the counter, but that with a better game management, ball possession included, which means that, yes, you are going to rely on the counter attack to break down your opposition, open up space, and create create a advantage going forward where you have a higher number than the number of defenders. So if you do that and you use a counter to do it, it is helpful. And Montreal had success last year and in the Champions League with this type of tactic. But you use as well a better game management where Mauro Biello, so late in the game, instead of subbing a striker for another striker, sub it for a defender. Cal Fisher comes in and helps reassure everything and make sure there's no chances given to the opposition late in the game to keep that clean sheet. And the change of tactics for Montreal, where late in the game they were not afraid of doing small passes to keep possession, to make sure that they keep the ball away from Philly. And I have to say, you mentioned Samuel Piat. You know what impressed me, Samuel Piat? So they keep it simple. That makes a big difference. where you have very, very high percentage of completed passing because you keep it simple. You don't create turnovers. And that's one thing Montreal really needed. And Samuel Piet was impressive in that aspect.
For his Spain experience. I mean, he wasn't playing at the highest levels of Spain. Obviously, he was in the second division and then ultimately the third for a while. But still, anyone I talk to that has experience working in that country on a technical level, and we have a few friends over there, talks about how they really stress stuff that you're mentioning right there, just technical proficiency, just the ability to do things tidily. And Piet's game, even though, I think for a lot of us that are Canadian soccer fans, like Canadian national team fans, were frustrated that he wasn't getting a chance in La Liga when he had that contract there, and we're hopeful that might have happened. But I think that nonetheless, still a young guy, came back, got those skills, got that technical training, and we saw it in the national team of the Gold Cup, and we saw it in the debut for Montreal, and regular playing time for him. Regular play time in a decent league, and MLS is a decent league. So that I think is a net gain for Montreal fans and for Canadian national team fans.
22 years old. Like we've been looking at Piet play at the national level for what? For 5 years solid? He started when he was 16, so it's 6 years, I guess.
Debut, yeah.
He's only 22. Like he's even younger than I thought. And the maturity of his play, how he handled the week, and it's a guy from the region. He lives in the Repentigny. It's just across the river from Montreal. It's a guy he watched the Impact growing up. Like before MLS Impact, but that's the team he watched. And he grew up and played in the same leagues as some of the academy players of Montreal. He has a lot of people. He knows a lot of people. And it's a coming home factor. It's a homecoming. And then you saw a performance that is very encouraging for him because he probably like, okay, I can do this. And you know what? I can be good here. Very, very prolific here. And you know what? My stock is going to grow here. The attention, and I truly feel that Curacao Canada game at Satsaputo earlier this summer played a big factor where he realized his impact, no pun intended, in the market compared to how he is portrayed somewhere else. His value is a lot higher here, not just salary-wise, but on the field too. With his technical skills that he learned playing in Europe, his level is going to be a lot higher than we even anticipate. I feel Piet Duane could become DP level in the next few years. That type of, not necessarily his worth, but his output.
Yeah, that'd be the dream scenario. And as I said before, you mentioned he's only 22. If he still has European aspirations, he could do 3 years in Montreal, expand his stock, and then leverage that either for a big contract, whether it be TAM or DP even in MLS, or he could probably make another move back to Europe if that was what he wanted to do. This is not a player that is anywhere close to even his peak years yet. He still has room to grow into his game. I think his peak years will come around the end of his contract for these impacts. So, just a smart move for the Impact to have the local guy that does have value in the market, in particular in a market like Montreal, and for Piet himself, because he gets to get home, he gets to expand some of his leadership skills, he gets to play regularly for a decent team in a decent league, and as I said, if he wants to expand that and move on to somewhere, either make a lot of money in Montreal or move back to Europe, then I think that option is still going to be on the table. All things being equal, they always put the standard caveats of injury or whatever in here. But yeah, this is was a smart move all around. And I think that if you're a non-Impact fan but a Canadian national team fan, you should be able to take a step back and be happy for all involved in this, because it's always good when a Canadian player comes home.
No, exactly. So for Montreal, Duane, they did some of the hard work they had to do to get back into the playoff conversation. But that work's not over. That work continues Wednesday against Chicago. Chicago is having a good season, but as of late, they couldn't keep the pace with Toronto. Chicago's a team that's maybe up for the taking right now. They got beat by Columbus on the weekend, 3-1. And Chicago's a little tired. They hosted the All-Star game. Some of the players had a lot of media do Schweinsteiger, Akam, Kappelhoff, and company. And you might see a team that's trying to recover form, fitness. So Chicago might be up for the taking for Montreal this Wednesday. So Montreal's got a chance to continue to put three in a row and to bridge that gap, which leads us to Duane, Vancouver on the road in Foxborough. Big travel here. And they laid an egg. They lost 1-0 against New England. New England, very underwhelming season so far. 10th in the Eastern Conference. But they got the win over the Whitecaps.
New England's funny. When I look at that could just be a T-shirt, really. New England is funny. But when I look at their underlying numbers from this year, like, expected goals and TSR and anything that you want to use as a metric to measure, they should be exceeding greater than they are. But yeah, there just is something missing about them, and I'm not too sure what it's about. But certainly they are pretty decent at Foxborough, and it was always going to be a tough trip for the Whitecaps. But we talked about that. We constantly talk about trying to get a handle on the Whitecaps, and there's a lot of increasing pressure. If you read, some of the more discontented voices out in Vancouver, there is increasingly a greater focus on Carl Robinson and the job he's doing there. Now, I don't think he's in any danger, but there are some people that don't really like his tactics and his man management, and think that maybe it might be time for a change in the Whitecaps. As I said, I wouldn't count myself in that camp, but I certainly do see increasing disconnect amongst Whitecaps fans who just seem frustrated that this club seems to be almost in a purgatory, that they're not particularly terrible, but they're not particularly good either. And it's hard to really place them beyond that.
With hindsight, their season so far and the amount of games played would suggest the same. Very similar to Montreal. They have 31 points. They're in 7th position right now. The only difference is their success on the road have maybe made the conversation a little bit different. 4-6-2 for the Whitecaps on the road. 4 wins on the road. It's not too shabby. But the home record, 5-3-2. A lot of drop points with draws at home. And those 3 losses could become very costly down the road. But it's not too far because, well, the gap is, there's no gap. It's only 1 point, and it's San Jose. And San Jose is going to San Jose. And you're going to get a chance to overtake them in the standings very soon. So Vancouver are in a better situation than Montreal when you compare the two, just because they're only 1 point behind that dreaded red line.
Yeah, look, just got to get in the dance, and I'm sure that that's the narrative that they're playing in Vancouver right now in terms of the season. That Seattle was below the red line, blah blah blah. In August last year, they went on to win the MLS Cup final. I mean, that's the difference, though, is that Seattle added an impact player at the deadline last year and was underachieving. Whereas I don't think anyone looks at this Whitecaps team and thinks that they're probably underachieving. I think some people might, but by and large, I look at them and go, yeah, that's about right. They're kind of just middling, and there was no impact players that came in. I mean, they added a couple pieces, but it really was just sort of, shuffling rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic, so to speak. I mean, maybe that's a little dramatic to put it that way, but you didn't really add any impact, is what I'm saying. So there's no real evidence to suggest that they could play one of those, Seattle Sounders get in a role in the playoff situation, because I think in MLS 3.0, you're going to be hard pressed to make a playoff run unless you have a game changer on your roster. And does Vancouver have that? Montero, maybe, if he could get rolling, that's the only guy that I would look at that roster and think that maybe he has a chance to do that. But maybe that time has passed too. Maybe the league has changed just enough since the late part of the last decade when Seattle debuted to make him less of an impact, game-changing player nowadays, and you might need a different level. I don't know. I've said this for years and years and years when it comes to the Whitecaps, that if they really want to become a contending team and not sort of struggling to kind of finish in those 4, 5, 6, 7 positions every year, they're going to need to open the bank vault at some point, and they keep claiming that they don't have the money to do it. I don't know, though. Seems like other teams that are in similar markets have figured that out.
Yeah, no, exactly. All right. As always, you can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. You can find on-demand version of all the show we do here on the network at sportspodcastingnetwork.com and on every podcatcher out there, especially iTunes Podcast and Google Play Store under the Sports Podcasting Network. Until tomorrow, as always, I'm Kevin Laramee, and have a great soccer.
You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
So we're supposed to have Ryan O'Leary, no?